Welcome to our recorded conference for the Nordic Innovation Funded project NordMar Ports. The objective of this project was really to strengthen port ecosystems, making them more innovative and more sustainable in the Nordic countries. My name is Alexandra Lipa, and I'm the Head of Research and Innovation at the Iceland Ocean Cluster, which is located here on Faxaflóa Harbour. This conference will be split into three parts. In the first part, we'll hear from the group linked to the Iceland Ocean Cluster that will tell us about how Nordic ports are hubs for innovation. We will then have a very unique intermission, which will be led by a company called Flow, which is one of the startups in the Iceland Ocean Cluster, and they have a meditation app which combines meditation, technology, and the beautiful Icelandic environment. In the second part of this conference, we'll hear from a group led by the Icelandic Tourism Board, where they will discuss ways in which we can make cruise tourism in the Nordic countries more sustainable. And in the third and final part of our recorded conference, we'll hear how we can reduce emissions and have more green energy in our Nordic ports, in a section led by the Icelandic Energy Authority. We will now open the conference by hearing first from Dr. Thor Ice, who is the founder and chairman of the Iceland Ocean Cluster. And we will also hear from the Minister of Infrastructure in Iceland, Sigurður Ingi Jóhannsson. Please enjoy our conference.
When I established the Ocean Cluster House in 2012, the idea was basically to bring together people from various parts of the marine industry to create this vibe that we saw in so many startup hubs all around the world. The issue with fisheries and the seafood industry in general is that there has not been that much excitement for the industry for many years. It seems like people look at the seafood industry as being a part of the past rather than something that we say is a part of the future. People have had maybe grandfathers and grandmothers working in this industry, but they've seen the numbers of fishermen going down, processing becoming more efficient, less and less people there. But what we saw is that there are huge opportunities in the industry as a whole, both regarding the processing of the byproducts, but also in various other fields. What we saw when we started with the Ocean Cluster House, and prior to that, was that there were startups in Iceland here and there. Some of them were very much a bit isolated due to the fact that this was not sort of the hype industry. There were more cool industries that young people were approaching. But given the fact that this is our history here in Iceland, and giving also the obvious reason that we are so close to the oceans, and oceans play a huge part in our economic life, we thought, why not bring these folks together and create a hub? We got the Reykjavik port with us, and we started with the Ocean Cluster House. In the beginning, we had around 10 companies. Now there are 70 companies in this facility. And later on, we will show you some examples of these companies and why they see a reason to be here, close to the harbor, a part of this, what we call now the innovative port of Reykjavik. In the past, the port was not thought of as being such an innovation place with lots of startups. But as we've created this community now, what has happened since is that companies have flooded in, and there have been this dynamism around it. Suddenly we have a community of startups in the seafood industry, not only in seafood, but in various other parts of the marine industry, that has created this, I think, this vibe where people believe that there is a huge opportunity in this industry as a whole. And obviously, it sounds so sensible now, but we had to tell the story. We had to tell people also that it would be unsensible, as is happening in so many other countries, to throw some of the byproducts away. Icelanders are now up to 90% usage of the byproduct of the whole fish, of the whitefish, while many other nations are closer to 45 to 55% still. So there is a lot of opportunity for the innovation hub all around the Atlantic and elsewhere to be created and to create this vibe also where we bring together the startups and various people with ideas, academics, marketers, designers, to create this environment where ideas will be created. We also had within this facility here investors that have played a huge role, not only because of their capital, but also because of their network. What is so needed in the seafood industry is a network of people that come outside of the core industry to bring in people that know something about nutraceuticals, beauty products even, that can be created from the seafood industry. And this is basically what we want to do today. We want to take you on a route, show you what we have been doing on the Nordic level, collaborating with our Nordic friends to continue on this track of looking at how we can create more dynamic ports in the Nordic countries, and also show you some examples from the Icelandic Ocean Cluster House and how these companies have been developing their products and their ideas. So let's now look at some of the companies, talk to some of the leaders of these startups, and get to know more about the Ocean Cluster House and its role as an innovative port, innovative hub in this innovative port.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to speak to you at the opening of this conference on ports and energy exchange. The importance of ports cannot be overstated for an island state like Iceland. A large majority of trade flows through our ports, which are therefore one of the foundation of the Icelandic prosperity. One of the main aims of the Icelandic government is to combat climate change and comply with the provisions of the Paris Agreement. The government has set a national target of 55% reduction in emission, for which Iceland is directly responsible by 2030 compared to 2005 levels. Emphasis will be placed on targeted and ambitious measures to reduce emissions from land use and accelerate energy conversion in all areas. The goal has to achieve carbon neutrality and full energy conversion no later than 2040, which will make Iceland the first state to be independent of fossil fuels. For the past years, Icelandic ports and shipping have been a large part of Iceland's program in energy transition towards a carbon-free economy. Today, onshore power is available in all ports and fulfills the requirement of the Icelandic fleet. The power is available via 230 volts or 400 volts. Work is ongoing to introduce more powerful connections so that the fishing vessels can operate on electricity while landing, as well as comparable options for ships used in fish farming. Although only one ferry in Iceland runs on electricity, the main ferries all use onshore power while they are in port. The Icelandic government intends to continue to support the energy conversion of ferries and in ports. The aim is that by 2025 there will be onshore power that services all operations of ships in ports. I have spoken about the measures taken in Iceland and our goals, but these are not only Icelandic goals. Carbon neutrality is a Nordic and European goal that calls for a great effort to be achieved. The Nordic Council, furthermore, has as its stated goal that the Nordic region will become the most sustainable and integrated region in the world. Reaching our common Nordic goal is reachable, and it calls for a combined effort. Cooperation in the form of knowledge sharing and common projects on energy transitions are of great importance for the states to reach our goals. I am therefore pleased to open this conference and wish you all the best in your work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heiða and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Learncov. Learncov is the training platform for the seafood and maritime industry. Our customers can use Learncov to train their internal staff, their partners and their customers. Let's look into an example of a company creating technology for the maritime industry. They can use Learncov to train their own staff so they can more easily scale their factory. On top of that, they can provide their customers with training and guidance on regular maintenance so they can more easily use their technology. When the customers use the technology correctly, it leads to fewer crises and better service. We've been really happy with the startup environment at the Ocean Cluster. We met a lot of amazing companies doing exciting things in the seafood and maritime industry, and we are even collaborating with a few of them. We're really happy to be a part of the harbour community.
Hi, welcome to Mariotec. We are a tech company which is specialized in software for the seafood industry. We have our main offices in Norway. 70% of all fish exports from Norway goes through our systems today, and now we are branching out, establishing offices in Iceland, North America and Chile, which is our priority markets right now. Having established office in Iceland with limited amounts of employees, being a part of a cluster as this one has been invaluable for us. It offers a community and it offers a network, and both of them are important for us. We look forward to following you through other establishments around the world.
Hi, I'm Aleaf, the founder of Aleaf Health Products. Aleaf contains pure Icelandic ingredients only, and the ingredients are coming from sustainable resources. We choose, for example, calcified seaweed coming from the Westfjord, collagen coming from 2 parts of the island, Icelandic herbs coming all over the island, and chitosan coming from the north, geosilica from the south part, and astaxanthin from the Suðurnes. So it's all over Iceland, and we are always looking for new material. All the ingredients are coming from sustainable resources. So that's why we have this name of the brand, Aleaf. It means forever, but it means also the life on the island. The plans are for export. We have, from the beginning, have had plans of export. Today we sell it in about 140 outlets in Iceland. We have been selling for 28 months, 52,000 units sold, and it has been a very good success. The most popular product is active joints for the joints, and the skin, the second one. The idea about this brand is that people should know why they should buy it, you know. Joints is for the joints. Skin and hair, and liver, and guts and bones. So that's the main idea. Aleaf was born in the Ocean Cluster, actually. So when I introduced to Thor what my plans were about Aleaf, he said, "Hey, you belong here." Then that's about 3 years ago. And I do highly recommend staying at the Ocean Cluster for startups, because here are a lot of networking, many connections, good energy, and a lot of things going on.
We are Tefling Marine. We are developing a system to optimize vessel speed in terms of fuel consumption, carbon emission reduction, and safety. And we use sensors to detect the movements of the vessel in the environment where it's being operated. And we use specific methods to convert these movements and this data into guidance speed. for vessels. And this is in particular for boats and smaller vessels. And we started on this project 3 years ago in full time. But prior to that, it was part of a research project that the co-founders of the company were involved in. We moved to the Iceland Ocean Cluster in October 2021, and it has been great support for what we are doing. We are meeting other entrepreneurs, you get ideas, you have a cup of coffee, and that might open a conversation that opens opportunities for those involved. And there are regular visitors coming to the cluster, and many of them pass by, and we have the opportunity to introduce what we are doing. So the whole concept of being in a cluster is very supportive for a startup like ours. And we can compare that to what we were before. It's just like an isolated office in a way, not within a dynamic environment as the cluster is.
My name is Esther. I am a project coordinator at Thor Ice chilling solutions. And what we do is we provide enhanced cooling technology to solve cooling problems in fresh food processing. We are one of the first companies that joined the ocean cluster, and we started out in the fishing industry using our ice slurry technology to cool fish and solve severe cooling challenges in the fishing industry. In recent years, we have grown a lot, and we have developed a patented technology that we use to solve major cooling issues in poultry processing. And using our technology, we use the patented ice gun, which shoots slurry ice onto fresh food as it passes along the production lines. And by doing this, we are eliminating harmful bacteria like Campylobacter, which is bacteria known to cause food infections. And we are also, by eliminating bacteria, we are extending the shelf life and reducing food waste, which is one of our core values. Thor Ice was nominated for the Nordic Council of Environment Prize in 2021, which is something we are very proud of. We are also part of EIT Food Rising Food Stars, and we have received funding from the Icelandic Technology Development Fund, the Nordic Green Bank NEFCO, and received a large Horizon 2020 European grant from the European Commission. So the company Thor Ice has grown a lot in recent years, but we are still a small company, and we've had great benefits of being part of the ocean cluster. We've gotten to know a lot of people, entrepreneurs, very driven people running all the companies here. We've gotten to participate in a lot of different collaborative projects, and we feel like we're part of a bigger workplace, which is really great. And we look forward to getting the opportunity to be part of further collaboration within the ocean cluster.
Greetings everybody, I'm hailing from Bergen on the west coast of Norway. My name is Björgólfur Hávarsson and I'm the Innovation Manager of Seafood Innovation Cluster here in Bergen. Harbours are incredibly important for the communities that are established and built around them. Not only are they an important source of goods, as they should be, but they're also incredibly important in terms of the ideas and innovation that harbours actually contribute to these areas. And you get that kind of people and mindset that actually harbours build up. If you look at cities like Cadiz, Rotterdam, London, Hamburg, Bergen of course, Reykjavik, Boston and New York, all these have become a major hubs, not only in trading but also in trading of ideas and innovations. As I'm calling you and hailing you here from sunny Bergen, it's not always sunny here on the Norwegian coast, I'm actually situated in the middle of the innovation hub called Marineholmen. Around me here are 90 odd companies that are all facing the water in every definition on the terms. They are literally on the water, on the harbour, but they're also working towards ocean industries, ocean science, atmospheric science, and the innovations that actually spring from that. The innovation area in Bergen is actually fueled and inspired by the industries, the ocean industries in Bergen and Norway. Our industries, our trades, and our culture is heavily invested in our harbors. Even now, if we see new visitors in our harbors that were not traditional, I'm thinking about service shipping from oil and gas, we are looking at tourism, we are looking at new vessels from wind power and from aquaculture. These represent the entire, or the backbone of harbors. They are always renewing themselves. They are always the same and they are always in development. There is a new kid on the block, or newish. They are called clusters. And the clusters are literally born and bred out of the innovation and idea richness that harbors comprise. So we, our cluster, our friends in Reykjavik, and other clusters that are building up are actually a true bred and true born child of these environments. And we are seeing how clusters are working together, feeding off and inspiring harbors in terms of new industries, in terms of new management systems, circular ideas, and new ways to use and adapt harbors to our cities. So this is a 2,000-year-old match made in heaven, and we think we have a couple of years still in us too, like 1,000 years or so. So I would like to say there's a bright future combining clusters and the harbors and the innovation and the cooperation that spring from those entities. So I wish you all the best during your conference and your meetings and talks, and I'm looking forward to see you at some other crossroad. All the best from Bergen.
Hi, I'm Lynn, and I have put a lot of thought in where I was going to do the introduction for the Danish ocean cluster. So I want to say that for us it's really important that everybody knows that we want to be a national, like a Danish national cluster, and we want to do a cooperation with the international, with our sister organization around the world. So what better place than in the Danish pavilion here at the Global Seafood Exhibition here in Barcelona. So I'm so lucky that I have a Nyhavn in the background, so it's kind of close but not. So I want to tell you guys about our story, where it started. So 4 years ago, I was lucky enough to visit Reykjavik and with Thor and Bertha at the time. And I was so inspired to seeing and listening what they have done with their fishery. And I saw the huge possibilities that we also have in Denmark. And we have some of the similar challenges, but also challenges just mean possibilities. So I was really inspired, so we went home and we started doing the work on what kind of a cluster we wanted to be, because if we're going to do something, we have to do it proper, and we wanted to bring something to the table. So now after 4 years, finally, we did the signing, and we are going to do the Danish ocean cluster. So every day I'm located in Hirtshals, so that's my base. And we do a lot of fishery and maritime service, and we do a lot of different things that would fit into this. But we are going to be a national cluster, and we are now finding out what our headline is going to be. In Iceland, we have like 100% of the cod, and we don't want to do the same thing that you guys have done. We have to look into what we can look at, what we can bring to the table, as I said. So for us, I think it's going to be the symbiosis. It's going to be a big part of it. And there's so many talented, good companies in Denmark that can bring something to the table, and we can look at the challenges and how we can learn from each other, and also have that different project and collaborations with the other sister clusters around the world. So this is like us in Denmark, and we are really looking forward to seeing you guys and getting to know you guys. And this is like the beginning of something really good. So thank you guys, and looking forward to seeing you soon in real life.
Hello Iceland Ocean Cluster. My name is Barbara. I am the CEO of Copenhagen Malm Port. Thank you for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity for for a small introduction on how we think innovation and what we're doing in the local community here. We're good friends with the people in the port of Reykjavik and around it, so I already know a little bit about what you do. Thank you so much for all the inspiration that you have given us in the work that we are in the middle of at the moment. I hope I can give you a little bit of inspiration back now. Copenhagen Malm Port is one company, 2 cities, two countries actually. But between us there's the Øresund, which is not separating Denmark and Sweden. We like to think of it as the water that connects us. So we have a port with a very busy strait going right through it. And we think that's an amazing opportunity. We have formulated a strategy towards 2025 that we name Ocean Valley. There's not a lot of valley in sight, so there's only this very flat strait between us, but I think you kind of get the idea of the valley. We would love to create a place where the blue maritime industry turns green. Not that that's going to be the only place in the world, and I think there's going to be a lot of beneficial cooperation between different ports and stakeholders that are on the same mission. What we have going for this location is that there are a lot of great maritime companies around us, traditionally both in Denmark and Sweden. There's also a lot of great science at universities and within the companies, and there are a lot of great green technologies. This is also one of the most climate ambitious regions in the world, also from a political side. So if you mix all that into one big bowl, we kind of thought that creating Ocean Valley became a natural response to that. So we are actually pursuing how to become sustainable within our own port. We focus on that every day, and we hope to be CO2 neutral and without emissions by 2025. I'm pretty sure we will get there one way or another. There's a lot of great colleagues with a lot of energy working on that already. But we're also working on Ocean Valley in a more ecosystem way. So how can we help initiate the good dialogues that create innovation? Who should we reach out to? What kind of technologies will this industry need in order to become more green in the future? And it will be a meeting place that's hopefully going to be physical, but probably mostly going to be in a more abstract way. So we hope that Ocean Valley is something in a couple of years people will refer to as, kind of an area, but also a way that you have these conversations. And we know they don't just start, so we were going to take upon us the role of facilitating and creating the initiative to make it happen in the beginning, and then hopefully we will have other great people and companies and university join that, and then one dialogue hopefully leads to another. It sounds easy. We know it's not. It's a huge ambition, but we definitely want to give it a try and see what happens, so that we can be a part of the journey that our industry in a very ambitious way now have embarked on, but that is also so necessary, and we all know that, and I don't have to teach you anything about that. You have the visuals right in front of you of what's happening. So I think it's a given now that we have that journey, and we all need to step into it. We're just trying to figure out how can we do it so that we will become sustainable within the port, but also how can we use the role that we have had as a meeting place, physical meeting place in the good old days for goods and trades. How can we transform that into a meeting place for ideas and technologies and sustainability in the future? I can give you one example of how we have started some of these dialogues. Super exciting, I think, because they demand a new, more creative way of working with either people you already know or reaching out to new partnerships. We have a customer, which is also a neighbor, which is a waste-to-energy factory here that is collecting garbage in and around Copenhagen. Then in the process of burning that, they create heat and they create electricity, but they also create CO2. So they are themselves on a very ambitious journey of collecting the CO2 from that process, so that the air they emit will be emission-free, fossil-free. Sorry. And then they have this question about, so what do we do with the CO2? So we are right now having a very interesting dialogue on how to capture CO2, how to store CO2, and where does the CO2 go? And suddenly we are in the same position as we've always been in the revenue model, where we receive something, we perhaps store something, and it goes out of the port again. But suddenly in a new context with a new product, we haven't treated or handled CO2 in that massive scale early on, but also into kind of dialogues on, so what should we do with that CO2? These are markets that are only just starting to form. And I believe that if you take an active role, you can actually be part of designing these markets, which is, if you have interest in entrepreneurship or innovation in any way, an amazing opportunity to have new kind of dialogues and new ways of developing your role and your company. So that's what we're doing with them right now. So we have to look at, where does CO2 go? Does it go in the ground? Should it be sailed to the North Sea? Should it become an ingredient in Power to X and the energy types of the future? Or what will happen with that CO2? So that's opening a whole lot of perspectives, and we're learning a lot from that and get very inspired from it. So that's just a few words on what we are trying to do here. Huge ambitions. Not sure we'll reach every single of the targets along the way, but I'm sure that following some of them will lead the way to new targets and new aspirations. Please do reach out if this in any way connects with what you are doing. I believe there's only one way we can all together solve these huge challenges we're in the middle of, and that's going to be by working together. So I don't see this as competition. I see this as cooperation and new partnerships. So I wish you a wonderful day and a great conference, and thanks for having me.
Gently bring your awareness to your breath as you breathe in a way that feels natural to you. Gradually start to deepen your breath, filling the lungs with fresh oxygen, infusing you with vital energy. Now inhale deeply through the nose if possible, and hold your breath for a moment. Then exhale through the mouth. Inhale deeply. Hold the breath, and then release it through the mouth. Find your own rhythm, always bringing your awareness deeper. You can breathe into the area that you feel that needs attention, and in that way, energy can start to flow through the area. Perhaps you've been feeling some emotional tension. On each inhale, imagine you're bringing patience and forgiveness to the area of tension. On the exhale, let the negative feelings completely go, breathing them out of your being. Gradually calm the effort of your breathing and let your body breathe gently at its own pace. Thank you for taking the time to meditate.
Welcome to this edition of the NordMar Ports. In this section, we will focus on the cruise industry and the drivers for sustainable development. My name is Mr. Elias Gíslason, and I'm the Director of the Quality and Development Department at the Icelandic Tourist Port. We are located now in the northern part of Iceland, looking over the Bay of Eyjafjörður to the beautiful town of Akureyri. In this section, we will have several speakers from all 4 countries that are connected through Norra. We will have Erna Kristjánsdóttir, a Director of Marketing and Quality at Faxaflóahafnir in Iceland. She will go over the economical effect of the industry for several harbors in Iceland and the sustainable challenges. Then we've had Alfinn Hjelm
from the port of Tórshavn. He will go do the same for the Faroe Island. And Elizabeth Cooper from Visit Greenland will inform us about the industry in Greenland and the challenges they are facing. Frigg Jørgensen is the Executive Director of IECO, and IECO stands for Association of the Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators. She will inform us why IECO are so eager in creating different guidelines for the partners and guest communities, and she will also show us a video titled Clean Seas Project that IECO has newly released. In Ilja Leoland is the project manager of IECO. He will inform us on the importance of community-specific guidelines and where these guidelines have been created and are in the process of being made. And last but not least, we will have Aðalheiður Borgþórsdóttir, a representative of the mayor of Seyðisfjörður in east of Iceland. She will tell us how those community-specific guidelines are working for them, but Seyðisfjörður was the first community in Iceland to create these guidelines. But before we cut to the speakers, I would like to go over some important points regarding the cruise industry here in the Nordic. None of the 4 countries we are focusing on in this project, that is Greenland, Faroe Island, Iceland and Norway, have set national policy framework specifically aimed at the cruise industry. All of those countries have, though, created tourism policies, but none specifically aimed at the cruise industry. Some local communities have set local regulations, such as cap on number of calls and number of visitors. An example of those are in Stavanger and Bergen, which both are in Norway. All countries have in effect guidelines regarding types of marine fuels, what the ships can use in the waters and harbors, as well as the sulfur content of the fuel. Where possible, cruise vessels are connected to shore with electricity while at port. Rules regarding noise pollution are in effect in some of those countries, especially near bird cliffs and at ports. There is a strict environmental policy regarding anchoring from the coast and transporting passengers ashore in most of those countries. So even we are missing a policy in all countries regarding cruise vessels, there are several rules and regulations, in fact, that apply to this type of businesses. The image for the cruise industry seems to be fragile among the general public, and it is therefore vital for the industry to listen and act accordingly. And it is interesting to see what IECO has and is doing to change this image. Now, economical benefits are important, and importance varies among the areas and ports. In some instances, the fees from cruise ships is the single most important source of income from the ports. Studies show that passengers on smaller vessels are worth more for the locals than the larger vessels. They tend to spend more on services and activities. I do hope you will enjoy the talks. Thank you and enjoy your day.
Hello, my name is Erna Kristjánsdóttir and I am the Marketing and Quality Manager of Faxaflóahafnir. I am also Vice Chairman of Cruise Iceland. Today I am going to inform you about the cruise industry for ports in Iceland. Iceland is an island located in the North Atlantic. Therefore, it is important to offer variety tourism service within the country. To be sustainable, Icelanders need to make sure that not all eggs are laid down in the same basket, because all tourism is equally important for the economy. The risk within tourism needs to be divided between the industry sectors, just in case if something comes up, just like we have been experiencing lately, like with the COVID epidemic. Tourism companies need to increase the supply of excursions around the country to minimize the strain on certain areas. Now I'm going to update you about the cruise statistic for Iceland. In Cruise Iceland, we have 22 ports. In the year 2019, 17 of them received a ship call to their port. Of course, it decreased in the years 2020-21 because of COVID pandemic, but now in the year 2022, we see a lot of increase within this sector. And like here in Faxaflóahafnir, we will receive 200 ship calls with 212,000 people. Not all, it will start slowly. Like in March, we received our first ship call. The occupancy in it was 50%, but from April to October, we assume it will be around 80% of the people who have booked that will arrive. But who receives revenue from the cruise industry, and what is the economy effect? The state receives revenue from the toll from lighthouse and custom clearance fees. The port receives revenues from the port and harbour service. The ship agent receives revenue for serving the ship, like communication with ports, public bodies, and domestic suppliers. The tourism operators receives revenues from planning the trips for the cruise lines. The bus companies and guides receive revenue from driving and guiding the tourists to locations within the community. The suppliers receive revenue from assisting with inputs on board of the ship, like food, beverage, and etc. According to a survey which was performed in Iceland by GP Wild summer 2018, the estimated revenues from ship calls from cruise ships were 16.4 billion Icelandic crowns in Iceland. Around 920 full-time jobs were created as a result of the cruise tourism. Many of these jobs were created at the countryside. But what are the sustainable challenges in Iceland? It is both in environmental and over-tourism challenges. On January 1st, 2020, a regulation came into force stating that the sulfur content of marine fuels used in Iceland may not exceed 0.1%. The above means that it is now almost impossible to use heavy fuel unless ships are equipped with cleaning equipment. Many of the ports have inserted air quality meters and put it very nearby the ports to monitor the air quality. Shore power connections for smaller cruise ships are available soon at few ports. Tourism companies need to increase the supply of excursions around the country to minimize the strain of certain areas. Eco-community guidelines are in place for Seyðisfjörður since the year 2018. Now in the year 2022, it will be available for 6 new places within Iceland. Is there a need for a national strategy for cruise tourism in Iceland? The answer to this question is yes. Each municipality, in cooperation with Port, needs to have a discussion about following. How many visitors can the area take? Are there enough infrastructure in the place? Buses, toilets, shop, and etc. How can we make our location memorable for our guests so they feel welcomed? Thank you and enjoy the day.
Hi guys, first of all, thank you very much for having me here to address you guys at this assembly. I've been an active member of the North Atlantic cruise industry for the past almost decade. This means that I have some insight into the industry, even though I don't know everything, not at all. But what I will be saying here today is solely based on my own opinion and my own account, and I should be held responsible for it. If we look at the past decade, I think there is a difference in the cruise industry development in the Faroes compared to our neighboring countries. If we first look at the composition of the global cruise fleet, for the past few years there has been a development that has been going in 2 different paths. Much has been invested into new builds, and the combined fleet has grown substantially. In numbers, the expedition vessels or the expedition segment has really been booming, while in capacity, a few new mega builds have been built as well. Mega ships have been built as well. Both these segments, the expedition vessels and the mega ships, are facing difficulties if entering the Faroes. Regarding the expedition vessels, one of their key sales proposition is often the use of zodiacs, where they will sail you into remote or unpopulated areas close to nature. We got some new Faroese legislation in 2019, which only allowed the use of zodiacs between cruise ships and an ISPS facility. So the business case for most expedition vessels wishing to arrive in the Faroes is more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's just more difficult than it have to be. When it comes to mega ships, defined as 4,000 plus passengers, there have been very limited berthing options for them here in the Faroes. These berthing options are improving as the facilities are being built better and bigger by now. But still the combined bus capacity in the Faroes is quite limited and is not easily adjusted for sudden peaks in traffic. This actually means that the main segment for Faroese ports is the segment where the least development has taken place for the past couple of years, the medium-sized ships. We can also see this in our statistics. We only have around between 40 and 50 cruise ships every year, and it's very difficult to increase the number of customers because the growth is in the other segments. Another change that is quite evident for the past couple of years is the nationality of the passengers. Germany used to be our second largest customer group. Now there are almost no German cruise ships calling the Faroes. Also, the number of American cruise ships have been declining. The reason for the decline of Germans and American is whale hunting. As you probably know, our traditional whale hunt is very graphic and a difficult subject for many cruise lines. Also, the unpredictable nature of the whale hunt makes some line replacing us with, for example, the Orkneys or Shetland Islands. If we look at the importance of the cruise industry to the Faroese local businesses, we can say that since the Faroese cruise industry is quite small, not so many businesses or workplaces are directly depending on the cruise industry. However, the indirect effects are not to be neglected. By indirect effects, I mean, for example, that almost all the buses in the Faroes are quite new with low emissions, and this is naturally beneficial both for the environment as well as for locals and other visitors as well. There are also some local produced knitwear, for example, that benefits greatly from every tourist, including cruise tourists. Another quite often forgotten benefit of cruise tourism is that most of the visiting guests do not spend much time ashore. However, if the guest has had a positive experience, they are excellent ambassadors in their own network once they're back home. This leads to an increased attention from other potential travelers. One of the most used or abused phrases in the world today is sustainability. It's a highly political word, and I must tread very carefully now, because what do we actually mean when we talk about sustainability? Now, first of all, I sincerely believe that we have a responsibility for our planet, and we must treat it well. And this is, for example, why we should invest in shore power opportunities for all sea-going vessels. However, if you look at the United Nations World Tourism Organization, they say that, among other things, sustainable tourism should, now I have to read it out, respect the socio-cultural authenticity of host communities, conserve their built and living cultural heritage and traditional values, and contribute to intercultural understanding and tolerance. And I'm afraid to say that this is something that we have, or that we are not experiencing in the Faroes, as many of the lines refuse to respect our traditions and cultural heritages. This is something we need to communicate towards anybody who's encouraging any cultural imperialism. Because if all destinations were identical, why should we travel? If we talk about a dream scenario, I think that if we are more open towards visitors in generally, and the visitors are respecting our culture and traditions, I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to accommodate a few more but a few more tourists. This could potentially lead to the creation of a few more products that is beneficial to the locals as well, and could increase to the quality of life for the locals. And who knows, maybe if the foreigners could learn something from us. Now, regarding the question whether we should have a national strategy in regards to the cruise industry, I first must state that I am an advocate of being prepared and having different strategies in place. However, one lesson from COVID is that the trees do not grow into the sky, and that all your preparations and hard work can fall apart by something seemingly harmless. If we have a strategy, it should at the very least be that we don't jump to conclusions, but look at all the facts and figures first. Here on the Faroes, we have around 30 to 40,000 cruise guests annually. And if you look at other more remote places, more fragile parts of the world, the numbers are much higher. The Galapagos Islands, for example, they have around 150,000 visitors. Svalbard, they have the same, 150,000. And even the Antarctic have around 170,000 visitors annually. And one thing that we need to remember is that when it comes to the cruise industry, we are a part of a global deployment, and that the key decision makers are not located in the Faroes or Iceland or here in the North Atlantic. Instead, they are primarily based in the US, UK or Germany. This global deployment means that the key decision makers decide a few years in advance how many ships to base in Europe and for how many months a year. This means that we need to provide stable conditions and safe circumstances. It doesn't mean that we shall not make any demands to the cruise lines, because obviously we can, but whatever the demands are that we are going to impose, they should be communicated well in advance so that the decision makers can take it into account when the global deployment is being made. If we communicate this in a respectful way, we can build a trustful relationship where our opinion will be heard and acted upon, without hurting the business environment where trust among partners is crucial. So to summarize, the strategy should thus be as based on the following punchlines: create ambassadors, invest in shore power, and communicate the local culture. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak for a few minutes about Greenland's cruise tourism industry. My name's Liz Cooper and I'm an industrial PhD fellow at Visit Greenland and Copenhagen Business School. My PhD research is jointly financed by Visit Greenland and Innovation Fund Denmark. So I'm going to first give you a brief overview of tourism and cruise tourism in Greenland. And then I'll talk a bit about the different types of cruise ships that we get and what moves we're making towards a more sustainable cruise tourism industry in Greenland. So tourism in Greenland in general and on a global scale is pretty undeveloped. Before the COVID pandemic, we were averaging about 100,000 tourists per year, with the vast majority of these coming in the summer months. So that's June to September in Greenland. Cruise tourism made up around 50% of all tourism in Greenland before the COVID pandemic, and cruise numbers were gradually increasing up until the 2019 season, which was the last cruise season before the pandemic hit. Because Greenland's cruise tourism is very short, about late June to early September, Greenland has now been without any cruise tourists at all for almost 3 years. Luckily, bookings are looking good for this season. So it seems like we're going to have a normal pre-corona season, maybe even a little bit better. So we can definitely say that cruise tourism is important for tourism in general in Greenland. In terms of its importance for the local economy, this is a matter of debate, as we don't really know how much money from cruise calls actually goes into the local economy. So more could definitely be done on the policy side to ensure that money from cruise calls benefits the Greenlandic people. The resident sentiment about cruise tourism in Greenland is generally very positive. So for some settlements that are very remote, this is pretty much the only form of tourism that they're able to have, since it's incredibly complicated and incredibly expensive to get there by plane. So some Greenlandic settlements are really very reliant on cruise ships calls. In Greenland, we receive both expedition ships and bigger cruise ships, but the really big ships don't tend to make many calls, as there's simply not that many ports that can handle their size and their number of passengers. Many tourism operators are quite open about the fact that they prefer the smaller ships, and one of the major cruise DMCs in Greenland actually announced quite recently that they will only work with AECO memberships from now on. There are a few reasons why we like the smaller expedition ships, so the AECO members. I'm sure many cruise destinations can relate to this, but some of the reasons are that they're required to outline a destination's community-specific guidelines to their passengers where they're available. These are guidelines that are developed by the local community and which tell cruise passengers how they would like them to behave in their town, quite specifically. AECO memberships often also have onboard experts who educate passengers more deeply about destinations, and this tends to lead to greater attachment and more respect. Of course, sustainability in cruise tourism is a very important topic, but it's also a very difficult one because cruise ships do pollute, and cruise tourists often have a bad reputation for kind of swinging by towns, moving around in large, intimidating groups, and not leaving very much money in the local economy. One of the reasons for prioritizing working with AECO members is that many of them are working on technological solutions to make cruise tourism more sustainable. Hurtigruten, for example, already has hybrid cruise ships that are coming to Greenland. And just yesterday I saw the news that they're working on an emission-free ship for their coastal route in Norway. However, AECO memberships also put a lot of emphasis on the human side of cruise tourism, as we have seen, for example, with educating their passengers and following community-specific guidelines. My own PhD research looks specifically at the human or the consumer side of cruise tourism, focusing on cruise tourist behaviour in Greenland. The aim of my project is to encourage more sustainable behaviour among cruise tourists in Greenland while they're actually in the destinations in Greenland themselves, so once they've got off the ship. And I'm doing this by developing and testing behavioural interventions or nudges that might subtly but substantially influence cruise tourist behaviour in a more sustainable direction. Finally, I was also asked to say something about whether or not a national strategy for cruise tourism in Greenland is needed. Of course, as is obvious from this very brief talk, there do need to be changes made if cruise tourism in Greenland is one day going to be completely sustainable. And then a strategy is of course helpful if it's going to work. But as we all know, it's not the development of a strategy in itself that makes things happen. So the most important steps in my opinion are that policy is revised. 1, technological solutions continue to be developed and work is done on the operator and consumer side to make sure that cruise tourist behaviour is as low impact and high value as possible. Thanks for listening.
Hello, my name is Frigg Jørgensen and I am the Executive Director of AECO, the Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators. AECO was established in 2003 and is an international membership association for expedition cruise operators with itineraries in Svalbard, Greenland, Canada, and Iceland. Our 70 international members includes 40 operators. They operate vessels that carry mainly between 12 and 200 passengers. A handful operate vessels that carry up to 500 passengers, while another small group operate vessels that carry 12 or less passengers. The expedition cruise operation is characterized by being smaller vessels than the conventional cruise vessels, but is also characterized by itineraries that are often flexible and not depending on infrastructure. in the areas where they visit. They can operate without harbor facilities. They can visit small communities, and they can also land outside communities. Their itineraries are often flexible and can be changed and altered depending on weather situation and other situations that may occur. The Arctic expedition cruise industry has decided to commit themselves to standards that are higher than the legal framework, and has done this through membership in IECO. IECO's objective is to ensure environmentally friendly, responsible and safe operations in the Arctic. We also have the objective to advocate for the industry and our members' interest. But as an association, we're not involved in commercial activities, marketing and sales. We work on these issues through different measures and standards. We have, for instance, developed 65 different guidelines that our members are committed to. These guidelines is part of IECO's backbone, and they have been developed based on research, cooperation with authorities and experts and local communities. These guidelines have been implemented in IECO's membership and are compulsory for our members. We have different types of guidelines. We have operational guidelines, we have visitors guidelines, we have guidelines for various wildlife, vegetation guidelines, cultural remain guidelines. We have yacht guidelines, site-specific guidelines, clean seas guidelines, and community-specific guidelines. Community-specific guidelines will be presented in another presentation, but for IECO it is of utmost importance to work closely with communities to develop guidelines, but also to ensure that the activities our members represent is valuable for the local communities. Therefore, we have engaged in dialogues and collaborations with a number of different local communities through their tourism association, but also through various partnership and commitments. We would like a dialogue where we, in collaboration, find out whether a community is interested in receiving expedition cruise calls and how this can best be organized and managed in the best interest of the community and the operators. Collaboration on areas such as cleaning beaches, research opportunities and so forth are part of IECO's community engagement. We find community engagement to be the future of tourism, and we work very hard to ensure that our footprint in communities is positive, and we encourage communities that have issues or would like to research the opportunities in expedition cruising in the Arctic to reach out to IECO. IECO has a number of other tools in addition to community guidelines. It's not the time and place for me to present on this today, but for anyone interested, I would encourage you to reach out for further information. Thank you for listening in today, and have a good day.
Hello, my name is Ilja Lang. I'm the Community Engagement Project Manager with the Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators. I would like to tell you a little bit about IECO's community guidelines. Community-specific guidelines are a tourism management tool that was developed in 2017 by Cruise Iceland, Visit Greenland, the Northern Norway Tourist Board and IECO in a project funded by NORA, the North Atlantic Corporation. The first guideline was created in 2017 and is a general community guideline which is applicable for all visitors in the Arctic. This guideline has pretty much common sense guidelines and directions to tourism or tourists going to specific communities, such as behave well, talk to people and not about them, clean up after yourself, do not look into private houses or windows, or do not photograph children or people in the community without their permission, and so forth and so on. It's really common sense guidelines, but our experience in the expedition cruise industry and with tourism is that if you tell these people or the visitors this beforehand, you are much more likely to get a successful result in regard to tourism, so that everybody has a good experience. So now, since 2017, a number of communities in the Arctic has developed these community-specific guidelines for their community, and they have developed this from the community-specific guideline template, which is also a tool we have beside the general community guidelines. And this template for development of community-specific guidelines was also developed in 2017. So now Arctic communities, because of the template and the general guidelines, can create their own community-specific guideline. And from the AECO side, we have typically helped with the facilitation and design of such local guidelines, but the initiative needs to be local and the ownership needs to be local. So that is, as an outside organization, we only work with the communities and help with the facilitation, but ownership has to be local. As a tourism management tool, community guidelines contribute to a better exchange and coordination between the local communities and the local authorities and the tourists and tourist operators. And the tool can be used in connection with all types of tourism in specific communities. So it's not only expedition cruise tourism. It is well suited for ship-based tourism, but it can also work with people who come by bus or plane or car or in other ways, however you get to the local community. AECO currently have 12 existing guidelines that has been launched since our first project. These are created in places like Nuuk, the Greenlandic capital, Longyearbyen, the main settlement in Svalbard, and Seyðisfjörður on the east Icelandic coast. And there's also community guidelines for 2 communities in Nunavut and many other places. AECO members has adopted all of these guidelines and made them mandatory for all of our operators. So all of AECO's operators operating small vessels, that is maybe 200 plus average size passengers, in the Arctic have made these guidelines mandatory. And that means that we really do our utmost to follow whatever directions the local communities put forward in these guidelines. So just to give you an overview of the benefits of community-specific guidelines, these can help tourists to be more informed about the communities they visit. They can also make sure that visitors better understand what to do and not to do in this specific place. They have the potential to decrease tension related to tourism and increase the number of good exchanges for both the visitors and the locals. They also help local communities to benefit more from tourism. It is possible in the guidelines to also have small commercial parts, that is, show them where to go for the local speciality or what to buy when in that specific place. That really is a win-win situation, since guests normally want to buy souvenirs and contribute. Also, the tourism can be steered locally and regionally, so it's a good tool for that, and it is a brilliant platform for sharing information sharing between the local communities, the local authorities, and the tourists or tourist operators. So, the background here is Aasiaat. That is a town in on the south of the Disco Bay in western Greenland. It has approximately 3,000 inhabitants and is Greenland's 5th largest town. I'm here to attend a community workshop arranged by locals, and the workshop is a part of AECO's latest community-specific guideline project. The project is sponsored by NORA, the North Atlantic Cooperation, and a collaboration with the Icelandic tourist board Ferðamálastofan. That is the project owner. Ferðamálastofan asked us in AECO to take over this part of the project. It's a part of a larger project. Because of Corona and other things, it was difficult for them to find the resources, and we in AECO have a lot of expertise in this regard, so it's a win-win situation. So the goal of the current project is to develop 10 to 12 new community guidelines, community-specific guidelines with local communities in Iceland, here in Greenland, in the Faroe Islands maybe, and northern Norway. Earlier this month, 5 community workshops in Iceland was held in the towns of Akranes and Húsavík and Djúpivogur and Risey and Grímsey. And earlier this week, I'm recording this on Sunday, 2 community workshops was held in Henningsvær and Reine in Lofoten, Norway. And over the next 2 weeks, another 2 workshops will be held here in Greenland beside the Aasiaat one, and that's in Qasigiannguit and in Qaqortoq, and it's also in the Greenlandic Disco Bay area. So, just a little bit about the community guideline process, because it's a pretty cool recipe. So what happens is that locals arrange a workshop with all important tourist stakeholders, and it is important that the ownership of the guideline process and the work regarding the creation of the guidelines is local. As an outsider and a representative of AECO, I only help facilitate the process. The workshop has to have a good representation of locals to be a success. And normally at a workshop, the first half of the workshop includes a general discussion about tourism and what works and what doesn't work. And in the second half of the workshops, the participants then work in groups to address the challenges that are typically discussed in the first part of the workshop. So until now, AECO's members have made these guidelines mandatory for all members. So AECO make the local guidelines mandatory in their operations, and this way the community is sure to have much higher success in making the guests they get do what they want, as the guidelines are taken serious and implemented. And in AECO, we think that the community guidelines here is a brilliant management tool. In essence, it is shared information between the locals, the communities, and the outside operators, as said, but also, if implemented correctly, it really can help the community and the guests to get better and more sustainable experiences and exchanges. So that was a little longer than I thought, but it was what I had to say. Just to sum it up, in AECO we think that the community guidelines is a brilliant management tool, and we would really like you to reach out to us if this is something you would like to go ahead with in your community or think is necessary where you are. Just a workshop is brilliant because people get a say and they take ownership and feel they're part of the local development, and that is just so important. So the process is very important here as well. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or want to get in touch regarding community-specific guidelines for your community. As said, my name is Ilja, and I am the Community Engagement Project Manager in AECO, and you can find more information about AECO and all our guidelines, also the one Frick told you about, and get in touch with us. Go to www.aeco.no. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Aðalheiður, and I'm a business promotion and cultural manager for Múlaþing, which is in East Iceland. I've been marketing manager for the Port of Seyðisfjörður since 2006. And the reason we made the guidelines for Seyðisfjörður is that I was invited to take part in this session with AECO, and the cruise calls were increasing rapidly. They went from like 6 calls up to 70 calls this summer, and next year I think it's 100 calls. So with that, the people in town were getting anxious. They were really worried about many things. So we thought that it would be really good to have a meeting with them and do the guidelines, which is a success, I would say. So we did these guidelines for Seyðisfjörður municipality. And one of the main things that people were worrying about was that, people were taking pictures of their kids, and they were taking pictures through windows of homes. And we have these old houses which are home, not the museums. So people were walking into our houses and things like that. So the guidelines are helping us to educate the guests that comes with cruise ships to Seyðisfjörður.
The Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators, or AECO, is an organization that is dedicated to managing responsible, environmentally friendly, and safe tourism in the Arctic. For nearly 2 decades, expedition cruise operators that are members of AECO have been conducting beach cleanups in the Arctic and witnessing the growing amount of garbage that is washing up on these remote shorelines. In 2018, AECO decided to step up the association's efforts to reduce marine litter by launching a project called Clean Seas. This project supports the United Nations Clean Seas campaign, which engages governments, the general public, civil society, and the private sector in the fight against marine plastic litter. AECO's Clean Seas project aims to significantly reduce single-use waste on board vessels, enhance cleanup efforts, educate passengers, staff, and crew, and share knowledge and best practices. AECO members are rethinking routines and practices in order to reduce the amount of single-use plastic on vessels. Through the Clean Seas project, AECO is developing guidelines on how visitors to the Arctic can reduce their waste footprint before, during, and after their trip, as well as guidelines on how to participate in cleanup activities. These guidelines are communicated on board vessels through a poster and an animation video, which raise awareness of the problem of marine litter and educate travelers on what they can do to be part of the solution. While the focus is on the Arctic, the principles that are outlined can be applied anywhere in the world. In addition, AECO is collaborating with scientists on research projects
to help the international community better understand and address marine litter. To date, IECO members have collected over 40,000 kilos of marine litter and have involved tens of thousands of cruise passengers in clean seas activities. The major funders for this project include the Svalbard Environmental Protection Fund, the Norwegian Environment Agency, and the Norwegian Retailers Environment Fund. IECO's Clean Seas project is changing how tourists in the Arctic can give back and proving that the expedition cruise industry is a driving force in the fight against marine litter.
One of the goals of the NordMar Ports project is to put emphasis on both onshore electricity and alternative fuels in transport. In that objective, the National Energy Authority of Iceland had the task to address legal and regulatory issues, infrastructure and technology in that same regard. In that aim, we focus on facilitating the formation of a network of professionals with an emphasis on dialogue and exchange of experiences and knowledge between the network entities. Also, to learn from each other and thereby jumping over the reinventing of the wheel. The National Energy Authority holds this part of the project, delivering 2 outputs from the project: mapping of legal and regulatory hindrances in the development of access to onshore electricity in ports and of the development of alternative fuels in transport. The mapping was created by the authority itself and also by Iceland New Energy. Rakel Guðjónsdóttir, project manager at the National Energy Authority, and Anna Margrét Corneliusdóttir at Iceland New Energy will both present our results. My name is Harpa Pétursdóttir and I am the legal counsel at the National Energy Authority and responsible for our part of the NordMar Ports project.
Hi, my name is Sylvia and I'm a specialist at the National Energy Authority or Orkustofnun in Iceland. Today I'm going to give you some of the preliminary results of the National Energy Authority part of the NordMar Ports project that Harpa previously gave an introduction on. According to the project description, the aim of the study was to firstly to protect a comprehensive summary of the legal framework development in the Nordic countries, with the objective to strengthen the role of port ecosystems as drivers of sustainability and innovation in shipping and ocean-based industries. With this, we wanted to map its possible issues related to the constantly increased use of onshore electricity and foreseen hydrogen opportunities in the Nordic harbor communities. The overview aims at facilitating further development of the matter within the port communities, as well as to establish connections and a network of experts on the matter. And secondly, we wanted to map the global codes and standards influencing synchronized and standardized development of alternative fuels and onshore electricity infrastructure. And we hope to have in the end of the project a suggestion of harmonized support schemes as well as recommendations for regulatory amendments in relation to OPS and hydrogen uses for ports and port ecosystem in the Nordic, providing a better opportunity to push for changes towards the improvements needed in the Nordic ports. If done properly, ports will be instrumental in greening of the society, and as a result, the public will be proud to have a port in their backyard. In order to gain insight into the topic of this project, it was considered crucial to register to relevant conferences and seminars that were mostly on the webinar form, and you know why. Of course, the plan was to initially travel, connect, and build network with the relevant Nordic port stakeholders, but we had to make a strategy change in order to deal with the consequences of the pandemic. As it turned out, traveling was mostly impossible during the project period, and therefore networking was mainly done via email communications and webinars. It was quite time-consuming to build up a strong network this way, since experience has proven it to be more effective to meet up with people in real life. However, communication was established with relevant parties from all of the Nordic countries this way, but information gathered was on quite variable level of details. Due to the pandemic, amendments were also made to the timeline of the project, with an extension of 6 months. However, there was a small window of opportunity to travel and meet people in the industry that we gladly took advantage of. And we were able to physically attend the Parliament Conference of Onshore Power Supply for Ships held in Copenhagen in September 2021 and the Green Ports Conference in Athens in October 2021. By attending these conferences and webinars, we experienced a great interest and many discussions on the newly published European Union Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package. The ambitious European Green Deal proposes that Europe will become the first carbon-neutral continent. Subsequently, the European Commission adopted a set of proposals in July 2021 to make the European Union's climate, energy, transport and taxation policies fit for reducing net greenhouse gas emission by at least 55% by 2030, compared to 1990 levels. That was named the Fit for 55 package. The legislative packet includes several different proposals of relevance to ports and their ecosystems that is foreseen to be a driving force in the greening of ports if passed. Now let's get back to the project. So what we did is that we sent out a template to relevant marine-related institutions and individuals in the Nordic countries. They were asked to fill it in with the correct and relevant information they had knowledge of and send it back to the National Energy Authority as soon as complete. Some gave comprehensive answers to the request of contribution, but did not always follow the template, and therefore the answers were of quite different details. The template had only one question that sounded this way: do you have existing legislation related to onshore electricity and/or hydrogen in ports in your country? If the answer was yes, the person was asked to fill this template you can see here. But if the answer was no, then the person was asked to fill in this template on the infrastructure in ports and policy vision and support on the topic. Overall, we received one or more answers from all the Nordic countries, and these were the main findings. Let's start with Norway. Norway currently has not a clear binding legal framework that demands ships to connect or ports to supply OPS or alternative fuels, but changes to that might be foreseen with the previously mentioned Fit for 55 package. But on the other hand, Norway has come far in building proper infrastructure and political vision for the greening of the maritime industry. This includes comprehensive governmental support schemes and funding and co-funding of OPS-related projects. It seems to be a common vision with all stakeholders that the topic is of high priority. And now let's move to Sweden. Sweden has currently no binding legal framework demanding ships to connect or ports to supply OPS. The scope of the current legal framework is on the technical aspects for the ship and onshore and tax reduction for OPS. It seems that the degree of electrification in Sweden ports is increasing quite slowly, and at present few Swedish vessels connect at berth. However, the infrastructure for high and low voltage OPS seems to be at place in many ports. Support via funding for technical innovation is provided by Transport Administration, the Energy Agency and Vinnova, Sweden's innovation agency. For Denmark, there is no binding legal framework for OPS and hydrogen usage, but the possible implementation of the Fit for 55 package might trigger some changes. Danish ports are aiming to be emission-free in 2030, but for that to be a reality, a continuation of the tax reduction is considered crucial, as well as funding and clarity of rules for whether ports could invest in green energy. Now let's go to Finland. No national laws or regulations are currently in place for this topic in Finland. The main policy vision on electrification in ports consists of the Prime Minister's Marin's government program to have carbon neutral Finland in 2035 as an aim. There is no specific national policy for port electrification, but as a minimum, Finland will follow the European Union Green Deal Fit for 55 package measures. Some ports are developing their own greenhouse gas reduction plans according to their specific characteristics and needs. The main support schemes in Finland for OPS and alternative fuels are European Union funding programs. No national specific support schemes are in place for OPS or alternative fuels. The measures needed to increase support are for OPS considered to be tax regime changes needed for OPS to make the change from traditional fuel easier. Traditional fuels are tax-free for foreign trade vessels. And we also need grid upgrading as well as mobile OPS solutions with carbon neutral fuels. Support is needed to cultivate solutions to mature to economically attainable level. That may require support for pilot projects and amending the regulatory framework to support the uptake. And also that hydrogen is recognized as a potential fuel, but for the roadmap from present to its deployment in shipping and at ports has still a lot of hurdles to pass. And let's finish with Iceland. For Iceland, there is no binding legal framework for OPS or hydrogen usage. However, there have been some amendments in the legal framework, where the electricity law now allows ports to sell electricity to buyers. Iceland is looking to Norway as a role model for EPI usage or the Environmental Port Index. As a funding scheme, the National Energy Fund supports a variety of projects for energy exchange and currently has an open call on the topic. The grants are a part of the government's actions on climate change and energy exchange nationwide, with an emphasis on transport throughout the country, including for heavy transport, ferries and ports, and networks of charging stations in scattered settlements and in the tourism industry. The main technical barrier for port electrification is the conversion of frequency, where the Icelandic system runs on 50 Hz, but the large vessels require 60. As you can see from these findings, many are relying on the Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package to be a driver force for change, and based on these findings, the Fit for 55 package might be fundamental as the driving force needed to bind the usage and supply of OPS into the legal framework in the Nordic countries. Funding schemes and financing of OPS are found to be quite variable between the countries, but if the Fit for 55 package will be passed and become binding in the legal framework, as many are speculating, this is a task that would be wise to try and harmonize, at least to a certain extent. Like I said earlier, the project is not yet complete, although it is on its very final chapter, finalizing in end of May this year. I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the preliminary results. The report will be published and available on the National Energy Authority website when complete. Thank you.
Over the last 3 years, partners in the NordMar Ports energy project have met with stakeholders around the Nordic countries, gathering insight into sustainable, clean energy, maritime applications. Specifically, we have focused on the implementation of onshore power systems and hydrogen bunkering for vessels. In addition, our objective was to map Nordic challenges and opportunities with regard to further adoption of these technologies that each can contribute to emission reduction. It's interesting to explore these solutions as one, namely OPS, is fully commercial and slowly becoming widespread at major ports, while hydrogen, on the other hand, is in its early days as an energy carrier for marine vessels. The adoption of OPS will increase further as national and international governments seek to meet climate goals and carbon neutrality in the decades leading up to 2050. Liquid hydrogen and its derivatives could indeed be used as fuels for marine vessels in future, once projects graduate from the demonstration phase to deployment. Pilot projects on promising fuels such as ammonia, liquid hydrogen, and other electrofuels will remain important to address technical challenges associated with the use of these novel marine fuels. In this context, Nordic maritime history, experience, and leadership will continue to be influential. Implementation of OPS and other zero-emission technologies involves significant capital investment and requires broad collaboration. Therefore, it's essential to share best practices among port authorities and other stakeholders, and these, together with proactive legal framework solutions, will accelerate the development and increase the share of alternative energy in port ecosystems. Ports can certainly be drivers for reduced emissions and, given the right incentives and partnerships, improve environmental conditions.
Hello everybody, it's really nice to be here. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about onshore power supply in the Nordics. I'm Roland Texera, I'm president of the European Onshore Power Supply Association, and I'm privileged to be joined by
Susan Dutch, a member of the executive committee of EOPSA. Happy to be here.
So, the European Onshore Power Supply Association was set up a little over 18 months ago. And it had a real ambition, together with our founding members, to represent the topic in a more professional way, to bring together all the various players that have an interest in seeing broader implementation, but as well to engage with decision makers in Brussels or across the various countries to make sure that they understand the value that onshore power supply brings. Value in its reducing of noise, reducing of pollution, and of course reducing of vibration. Three very important topics for people living around port environments. Susan, for you, onshore power supply is not a new topic. You were involved, 20 years ago at the port of Gothenburg in the very first project. How did this come about? What were the main drivers?
It's true, Roland, that I've been involved in onshore power supply for many years back in time, and one of the most important key drivers have been very clear customer expectations on developing a green transport corridor. Another one is, of course, to really show how to improve the environmental performance in the port by cutting noise, vibration, improve air quality, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that has also been an important factor.
So the successful collaboration between the various stakeholders of this project really started with a customer. I would say with customer maturity, a customer who already looked to reduce their impact, to have a positive impact on the environment. Is this cultural, you would say?
At that time, I believe that the Nordic countries and also many of our customers were very advanced in comparison to other European ports and also other European companies. So that's true.
And I would say today, I think one of the research that was done by the European Onshore Power Supply Association, by EOPSA, showed that out of the 79 commercial ports in the Nordics, so Norway, Denmark, Sweden and Finland, already 24 have high voltage OPS. And this is for which type of vessels?
Passenger, ropebacks are the most common vessels.
Cruise?
Some cruise also.
Some
yes.
cruise as well. So this clearly shows that there's been a long-standing ambition to reduce emissions in ports. Do you know about the incentives that were offered?
Some of the incentives that have been really important are this tax exemption. So it was a cut by 97% of the electricity tax in Sweden. But that was also after 6 years of hard lobbying work towards Brussels, but also towards our own government.
And this is a best practice. This is something we across Europe today could use to show and to highlight how you get these type of projects delivered, wouldn't you say?
I would say that that's one important factor to succeed in taking away, get rid of all the barriers that are there. For example, electricity tax on the electricity, but not on the bunker. So we want to make it more neutral. So Roland, I've been talking about the customer maturity in Sweden and in the Nordic countries as important success factor for the implementation long time ago. What do you believe is happening in the rest of Europe, and what's your view on that?
So, Susan, I saw myself working on onshore power supply about 17 years ago with the projects we did in Rotterdam. We've seen actually pretty slow take-up, and the explanation for that is really customer maturity. But there's some very positive signs. Today, every cruise vessel being built in shipyards around the world will have onshore power supply. What we need to achieve is a broader implementation in ports. We need the energy producers to actually come to doing their real job, which is install technology and therefore transfer the electron onto ships. We need the shipping companies to realize that the solution isn't that complicated as they think it is, and that there are, with subsidies around, less and less barriers to install the solution, even on a retrofit. So I'm pretty positive about the opportunity, and I think the job done by some of the leading European ports has been tremendous. Mm-hmm. We're very grateful for the lead that we've seen in some of the leading ports in the northern part of Europe, or in the Nordics, of course, and the best practices we can take from that. But there's a lot still to do, and we're very much looking forward to helping that delivered.
And what's your message to the Nordic governments listening to this webinar? So
I think sustainability is a journey. We need to continue being absolutely determined on delivering solutions that reduce our emissions, reduce noise, reduce vibration, really give a quality of life to seafarers, really give a quality of life to people who live around ports. So ultimately, I believe that the Nordics, even though they were leading, they shouldn't be slowing down their installations. I think they should even speed up their installation and promote with the rest of Europe what we at the association call reciprocity. So the ability for shipping lines to connect as much in the port of Gothenburg as they could connect in the port of Rotterdam, as they could connect in the port of Valencia or Barcelona or Genoa. So effectively get enough installations so that along shipping routes you can find the same technology or similar technology to make sure you switch off your engine. There's a lot of cost saving behind switching off your engines, and this is really something we need to promote across Europe.
And the governments, what should they do to help, to assist?
Very first, clearly we're delighted to see the work being done on the legislation AFIR. That's a European Commission legislation. It's going to be presented to the various countries, to Parliament, and it's going to be voted on. And there's enough subsidy and clearly incentives to be able to deliver this type of technology. OPS is specifically taken up as a solution, and we welcome that as an association. Clearly now the national governments have to come as well to supporting this type of technology, and this can be through clarity of, for example, support. So where does the support come from? Does it come from the Ministry of the Sea? Does it come from the Ministry of Economic Affairs? How do I apply for support for these type of technology? And then, of course, as you, Susan, very clearly highlighted, we need the industry to work together. We need a great collaboration between the energy producers, the energy users, and of course the Port Authority has a really important role to play in bringing us together and making sure that these projects get delivered and keeping that pace of delivery of the different OPS solutions across Europe.
So, great comments and great ideas to move things forward. And we really do hope that you have some takeout from this seminar. And we wish you all the best in the implementation of the technology.
Absolutely, and collaboration, implementation, clarity, and that will deliver more sustainability.
And please follow us on LinkedIn.
Hydrogen is extremely difficult. Economically and technically, it has proven time after time to be a big challenge as maritime fuel. But nothing is as pure as hydrogen, and that attracts people, companies and countries with ambitions to work for a clean future. What is happening in Norway? I will try to answer that today. Hello, and thank you for inviting Maritime Cleantech to present on the Sustainability Port Conference. My name is Sven Rolfsen, and I work as a project manager in Maritime Cleantech. I will focus most on the consumer side, the ships. However, it is difficult to talk about hydrogen status without also mentioning the production side. Simply because in this starting phase of using hydrogen as a ship fuel, production and consumption has to go hand in hand. To start off, I will give an example of how this affects actual projects. When the liquid hydrogen ferry MF Hydra was contracted, the plan was to ship the hydrogen by truck from Germany to Norway. This would be necessary once every 3 weeks, simply because there is no liquid hydrogen production in Norway. Only 3 facilities in Europe produce liquid hydrogen. Still, to achieve the technology development necessary for liquid hydrogen to become relevant as a maritime fuel, the project was started. But the best would be to have liquid hydrogen production closer to actual operation. And as time goes, new projects start up. Because it looked like the prayers from the ferry operators was heard. During the development of the ferry MF Hydra, a new hydrogen project was initiated, production of liquid hydrogen on a facility called Mongstad, north of Bergen. Perfect for the ferry. You can see the position of the ferry route and the production location on the map on the slide. This project would also work on establishing a maritime distribution and bunkering solution for liquid hydrogen. In addition, synergies with a local oil refinery, offshore base and a planned fish farm was also promising. A new coastal ro-ro ship that operates between offshore bases along the coast was also part of the project to both run on liquid hydrogen and transport the liquid hydrogen along the coast to other consumers. The project went on for approximately 1 year, doing planning, analysis, testing, and gaining required approvals. However, when it came to making the final investment decision, the uncertainties in the project was still too big to go through with. Main uncertainties was cost of final product and willingness to pay for this in the maritime market. At first, a relatively small production quantity of 6 tons per day was planned, and the project had identified relative firm offtake of this production. However, a future upscale to 30 tons per day was planned, and for this to go through, a lower production cost would be needed to find additional consumers. This was a setback for all parties involved and all those cheering for a green shift in maritime sector, but hope is still there that new financial options and bunkers compensations can make the plan a reality still. Let's take a more holistic view on hydrogen projects in Norway. There is a constant flow of new projects being initiated and receiving funding. That makes it difficult to keep updated and find out what are the firmest plans. Most of the funding so far is for pre-studies and initial work, but with a hope or plan to realize within short time. Recent development is that more and more land-based industries look at either producing or utilizing hydrogen. This can give a surplus of hydrogen that can be made available as maritime fuel. Typical industries is power-demanding industries that maybe have a surplus of electrical power that can be used to produce green hydrogen. Alternatively is industries that utilize fossil fuels as an element in the process, but wish to change this to hydrogen. And they plan to do this by local production of hydrogen. This lowers the risk of necessary maritime offtake, but also limit the available variants of hydrogen. It is, for example, unlikely that such industries will produce liquid hydrogen, given the cost and complexity of such processes. This can favor compressed hydrogen in regards to availability. In addition, many counties in Norway take initiatives to hydrogen production. The counties are for the most part the owners of local electrical power companies, and the local politicians look at how green hydrogen can reduce the emissions in the counties. For example, all the fast ferry connections that run all along the coast. This also contributes to the overweight of initiatives along the coast shown in the map in this slide. So, one thing is to produce the hydrogen. It also has to be transported and stored on board the ships. Hydrogen storage can easily or generally be grouped like this. In its pure state, either as compressed or liquid, or absorbed in another compound. The types of these compounds differ a lot. Common for them all is that they should be able to release quite pure hydrogen from a relatively simple heat treatment. This differs from hydrogen carriers such as ammonia and methanol, where a type of reforming have to take place to be able to get pure hydrogen out. Each and one of the options have positives and negatives, and so far there is no clear preferred solution for the maritime applications. For example, the metal hydrides is not involved in any maritime project as we know, but could have potentials in ship segments where weight is not a limiting factor. 100 kilograms of metal hydrides can hold approximately 1.5 kilograms of hydrogen. So if 1 ton of hydrogen is required on board, this would require approximately 67 tons of metal hydrides. Organic storage is involved in a couple projects in Norway in the type of LOHC. This has positive sides in regards to storage and handling, but the output hydrogen is not as pure as other alternatives without additional purification after treatment. However, it can be suitable for solid oxide fuel cells when that technology matures. Then there is the pressurized versus liquefied. Pressurized is cheaper compared to liquid, but require longer bunkering time, more storage space, and introduce more leakage possibilities due to many tanks, pipes, valve, etc., and high pressure itself. Liquid hydrogen avoids many of these elements, but have other drawbacks such as boil-off and the very cold temperatures. How is the various storage options distributed among ship projects? Here it is shown a selection of hydrogen projects in Norway. Even though compressed hydrogen seems easier and more favorable for most the projects that are coming, the one that is closest to realization is the MF Hydra plant for liquid hydrogen. The liquid hydrogen plant on board will be installed during summer of 2022 after it has done a long testing phase. Also, most of the projects seem to favor fuel cells for energy conversion. However, engine makers are increasing the effort to also deliver combustion engines capable of running on hydrogen. For now, one maker, ABC, have a hydrogen engine ready, planned installed on the bulk carrier shown in the slide. The other projects shown are fuel cells. Please note that this is only a selection of projects. Many more is also in the development and planning stage. LOHC as a storage alternative has gained traction with ship owner Østensjø on the owner side of company Hydrogenius that have LOHC technology. A series of 9 ships is on order, prepared for LOHC and fuel cells. If all those at some point will be converted to LOHC, it will represent a considerable contribution. But how will this be bunkered and distributed? Bunkering and logistics is still under development and is done case by case in each project. Quite many projects have focused on this in connection with the different ship projects, so many of the solutions are ready to be made when time comes. So to give one clear answer to this is not possible. But liquid hydrogen is quite straightforward to bunker and transport, either by truck or container, while compressed is more in favor of being able to bunker at a shore facility to get enough volume. This is simply impractical to distribute on the road for maritime volumes. I want to sum up with a simple message. We need realization of all the good projects, and if all is built, we will require quite a lot of hydrogen. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your attention today, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the challenges and opportunities that we have both now and in the future to strengthen Nordic port ecosystems and make them more innovative, more sustainable and more future-proof.